Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. I'm Frank Rausen Pereira, and after a gap of over 6 months, it's good to bring you India's World yet again. Well, the second meeting of the India Central Asia Dialogue was hosted virtually on Wednesday by Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar and saw the participation of his counterparts from Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, and also the first Deputy Foreign Minister of the Kyrgyz Republic. Among the highlights was announcement of an additional $1 billion line of credit to India, or rather by India, for the Central Asian countries. All ministers called for settlement of the Afghan conflict on the basis of Afghan-led, Afghan-owned and Afghan-controlled peace process. According to the MEA, they also expressed similar sentiments on combating terrorism by destroying safe havens, infrastructure, network and funding channels, and underlined the need for every country to ensure that their territory is not used to launch terrorist attacks against other countries. Well, in this edition of India's World, we will analyze the second Indo-Central Asia Dialogue. Joining me on the program today are Amar Sinha, former ambassador; Ram Upendra Das, head, Centre for Regional Trade, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India; and Major General Dhruv C. Katoch, retired, Director, India Foundation. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of India's World. Ambassador, let me begin the program with you first. Let's understand and try and analyze, the key takeaways, key highlights really as far as the second India-Central Asia Dialogue was concerned.
Thank you for discussing this. As you said, that this was the second ministerial level meeting, but the initiative actually, we launched a policy on Connect Central Asia in 2012, which was, of course, a vision document, which was given concrete shape when Prime Minister Modi took over in 2014. If you recall, it was his first visit. He did a whirlwind tour of Central Asian countries from 6th of July 2015. I think it was in conjunction with the BRICS summit. And since then, we have paid a lot of attention, at least this government. But going back in history, if you remember when the Soviet Union broke up and all these Central Asian countries and other republics came out, India was one of the first countries to recognize all of them by 1991. In 1992, perhaps we had the largest expansion of foreign ministry and diplomatic presence in this region, and we had opened around 9 embassies and resident ambassadors, which included 5 in all these what we call the stans, the 5 Central Asian republics. So, of course, this was to build on the historical relationship, both cultural and our own direct political relationship, but also that had developed when they were all part of the Soviet Union and we were very, very close. And of course, in today's context, Central Asia is very important strategically, which we will, of course, discuss. So I will leave it at that. So it's a great sort of continuation. And I think Government of India will continue with this emphasis on our relationship with Central Asia.
Absolutely. All right. So since the ambassador brought up the strategic angle, General, let me take that up with you. What strategic importance are the Central Asian republics to India and vice versa?
Now, Frank, I think when we're looking at these 5 Central Asian republics, their importance goes back actually well over 200 years when we had the great game going on between Imperial Britain and Tsarist Russia. And these 5 countries were under the orbit of the Russians. And later on, of course, they became part of the Soviet Empire. And then we have Afghanistan, which actually became the no man's land, so to say. That was that area which was kept to keep Russian influence out from what was British-controlled areas, and similarly, it acted as a buffer for the Soviets against an imperial Britain. Now, today, what is happening is that our main concerns when we are looking at India, one is, which will be spoken of later, our ability to get into the economics of the Central Asian republics. It is an area which is very rich in mineral wealth. Now, we don't have access to it, right? And so hopefully at some point of time through the Chabahar port and the road which is going via Afghanistan, that connectivity will be built, which is not existing now. But on the other front, besides economics, if you take it, I think there is a very serious threat of when we are looking at terrorism, which was also spoken of by the External Affairs Minister in this round. Now, the problems are really that the way Islamic terrorism has spread in West Asia, and when those people start coming back and they will go into some of these areas of the Central Asian republics, this could create a problem. And I think the Russians are also concerned about any influx or any increase in radicalist thought in the Central Asian republics. That is one concern. The second thing is what is going to be the spillover of Afghanistan? Which way is that going to go? And if Afghanistan gets radicalized, if the Taliban gets back into power, which is quite possible, and it's possible on the cards, then what will happen to these? What will be the situation in the five Central Asian republics? Now, I think this is something which is a matter of concern to us. Let us remember, it is when all these five countries are taken in conjunction, we are looking at an area which is 20% larger than India. However, when we take the population, the net population of all the five countries is just about 75 million or so, which works out to about 5% of India's population. So we are looking at areas which are very lightly populated, and where if extremism starts flourishing, the local countries, the leadership of these countries does not have the capacity or will not have the capacity to address those concerns. And obviously, at some point of time, the spillover comes over to India. So I think our interest is really to have a stable Afghanistan, and it is to have a stable Central Asian republics. Because if stability is there in both these regions, it promotes India's interests completely.
Absolutely. All right. So, Professor Das, let me bring you into the picture now. Let's talk about the economics, really, of the ties between India and the Central Asian republics from an economic point of view. How important is the relationship?
So, as the previous speakers have already highlighted, it is very important to understand the connect between India and Central Asian republics in a very holistic, comprehensive, and integrated manner. And when I say this, let me highlight the relationship or the causality between peace and economic development, because the causality between peace and economic development actually run in both the directions. So while on one hand, all efforts have to be made to keep the region peaceful and stable, at the same time, we should not wait for peace to descend. This is something which I have been arguing for. We should simultaneously integrate, connect, and interact with the Central Asian republics, as we have been doing in the recent past, in terms of trade, both in goods and services, in terms of foreign direct investments, as well as technology and human resources connect. And that is why the recent dialogue, which, as you very rightly highlighted, in terms of availability of line of credit of $1 billion for various sectors like IT, medical, education, and so on, as well as a grant to actually be focusing on high impact community development, which is going to actually contribute to the socio-economic development of many of these countries. This is very important context. Why do I say this? Because historically, as the previous various esteemed speakers have spoken, we have had cultural, civilizational, and even spiritual connect, be it Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, through the Silk Route and the Spice Route, the trade and ideas and cultures actually flourished, simultaneously. And therefore, given that background and the extended neighborhood that these countries belong to, it is very important for India to, connect with these countries with the help of Iran and Afghanistan. On one hand, to keep this region stable, peaceful, at the same time contribute to their economic development. But in the same time, those who have studied chemistry would know that Mendeleev's periodic table, almost all the elements of that table are present in this Central Asian region. So therefore, the energy and the mineral resource richness and the skills that this region possesses, it is something which is poised for an India Central Asia connect of a new contour, context, as well as content.
Absolutely. All right. So, Ambassador, since we are talking about Afghanistan, since everybody has spoken about Afghanistan, even at the dialogue, Afghanistan played a very big part. What's at stake for the Central Asian republics as far as Afghanistan is concerned? What is their stand? What is our level of understanding with them? And are there any common meeting grounds or commonalities?
Okay, let me first highlight. You see, when in India, when we think about Central Asia, we think that's something very far away, inaccessible to us. We are locked out. But if you really looked at the map of India, only the Wakhan corridor really divides us from Central Asia. Well, it's unfortunate that Pakistan has a certain territory of Jammu and Kashmir illegally occupied, which has increased the depth. Otherwise, we are immediate neighbors. On Afghanistan, since two issues on which we are on the same page. First, that the terrorism and radicalization, which is emanating from AFPAC region, does not spill over either towards us or to Central Asians. And that is what I think it gets reflected in the joint statement that you see, that it's very, very strong. Without naming any particular country, they have basically said what we have been saying for a long time, that, it is not enough to just talk about ending terrorism, but you have to really end the infrastructure and the funding and the entire infrastructure. And it is of major concern because it is not only the Taliban and the different groups which are embedded in Taliban, but all Central Asian focused terrorist groups, and including Chinese focused terrorist groups, are actually also embedded in the same region and in the same structure of infrastructure of terrorism that we have seen, whether it is Islamic what do you call IMU, which is on Uzbeks, then you have Tajiks, then you have Chechens, then you have Uyghurs. So this is a real concern to them. And these societies are very moderate. They are very forward-looking. They perhaps they are not imbued with the same sort of radicalization, and they are very concerned. And that is why, if you'll notice, even when the civil war had taken place, or in Afghanistan, or when Taliban was in regime, all these countries were our partners of Russia and Iran, in trying to see that we help the nationalist forces in Afghanistan and bottle up the Taliban and eventually defeat them. And that is what has happened. And I think it's very timely that we got together because, of course, Afghanistan is the natural connect for these countries. The other thing that, of course, which ties up along with Afghanistan is this access to sea. You see, Central Asian countries are doubly landlocked. They are actually landlocked by countries which are, their neighbors are also landlocked. That's why I call them doubly landlocked. So the Chabahar port initiative that we have taken is not only a lifeline for Afghanistan, actually it is a lifeline and the shortest route to the sea for all Central Asian countries. And that's why we have, you have seen in the statement that there's a huge sort of support for that initiative, that we should go ahead. And we have done all the basic groundwork in terms of joining all the regional legal architecture for trade and transit, various motor vehicles agreements, so that once it gets operational, there would be no impediment left. So I think we need to work on this thing. Absolutely. One more thing we have to, I will add to Dr. General Katocha's statement. See, while Central Asia, of course, is important to us on its own, but when you see that Central Asia is really stuck between three great powers, you have Russia, of which they were part once, but on their east is also a very belligerent and expansionist China. And let's not forget, that is also of great concern. Now look at China. China's access to Central Asia is through territories that it has occupied after the formation of the PRC, while unfortunately we lost our access because of illegal occupation. So there's an irony that I see. But not only in South China Sea, we have seen that China has now made claims on nearly half of Tajikistan, the entire Pamir region, which is really the waterworks or water store of the world. Energy of not only oil and gas, but water richness of Central Asia is absolutely outstanding. And there are a lot of projects sort of on the table that how that can be converted into hydroelectricity and used for the region's benefit. So there are a lot of very sort of important issues which connect us and with which I think India should remain very engaged.
Absolutely. All right. Let's talk about this particular aspect of China, and let me take that up with you, General. We'll dwell on that a little bit. As far as China is concerned, what is the level of level of influence as far as China is concerned with the Central Asian republics, and how much of a problem is that for us?
No, I think Chinese influence in the Central Asian republics is considerable. For the simple reason they've got the financial clout and they have access. Now, if we simply have to do a comparison between India and China on this issue, then I'm afraid we are very, very far behind for two reasons. One, we don't have the same financial clout. And secondly, and the more important reason, I think, is we don't have that connect. Now, Mr. Das very correctly talked about civilization and other linkages, which have existed for more than 2 to 3,000 years. But unfortunately, without a connect, everything tends to disappear. So we are on the back foot in that particular instance. Now, what China has done, the claims which they have made to very large parts of territories, especially on the upper ridges. Now, that as the ambassador very correctly stated, they are controlling the water sources. And if you look at what China is doing, even in Ladakh and in Arunachal and in other areas on the Himalayan crestline, ultimately their aim is to control the waters. And why I want to mention this is, if you can control the waters, then where those waters flow to, the regions where they flow to, you can actually, through dams, etc., control their economies. Now, which is why China is really going for that. And they have the money. So I think as far as we are concerned, it is something Chinese influence there is a matter of great concern to us. The second thing is, which will become a great concern to us, is if these regions start getting radicalized the way Afghanistan got radicalized. Now, that has not happened yet. And I think that is a good thing. But the way I've looked at it, simply from the military point of view, these are very small populations. Some of these countries have got a population of just about 6 million people, and they're very, very large land areas. Now, when we are looking at small populations in large areas, most of which are mountains and deserts, then we are looking at a problem of combating such forces. And it is a very, very difficult job, which will be beyond the reach of the security forces of the respective countries. So I think that it is not so much combating the terrorism that we can handle. It is to combat the radicalization of the people. And if so long as that is done, then the terrorists will not really be able to make a foothold there. For us, I think what we need to do is to ensure that even if when peace descends on Afghanistan, which at some point I hope it will do, the Taliban should not be there as part of the controlling structure. Because if the Taliban comes in as a part of the controls, then I'm afraid we are in very, very serious trouble. And they will only get into control if the Americans completely withdraw. So regardless of what happens, if the Americans go away completely, that vacuum will be filled in by the Taliban, because they will be supported by Pakistan. And then I think that even the Central Asian republics, their radicalization, that is the next step. So I think as part of our interest, both for India and the Central Asian republics, what happens in Afghanistan is of very critical importance.
Absolutely. Professor Das, we've spoken about connectivity quite a bit on this particular program, and how the lack of it is hindering progress the way we would like to see it. So from that point of view, do you believe that the Chabahar port is extremely important, and also to take it forward, this entire international north-south corridor, how important is that?
Well, connectivity has now, in today's context, again, you will have to have a very comprehensive approach, and different dimensions of connectivity would be focused upon in different time frames. So, for instance, you have land connectivity, an issue which is being sought to be addressed through the international north-south transport corridor. And India is present in Chabahar, also in Bandar Abbas, and within the ambit of Heart of Asia initiative, as well as the Eurasian Economic Community interaction with India, on which there are some talks as far as trade agreement is concerned. These augur well to get the INSTC project in the medium to long term going. But at the same time, we have to see connectivity also from the maritime, air, and digital side. Again, maritime is going to take some more time, and land and maritime are in a way interconnected. But if you see the first India Central Asia dialogue, where it was discussed to have air corridors, and if you see the statistics in terms of the number of flights that have connected the Central Asian republics with India, including via Amritsar, so to say, you would find that a lot is possible through the air connectivity, where high volume, high value, low volume, products in goods, which can be exported as well as imported. On the other hand, connectivity through air is also something which is going to help fructify India Central Asia Connect in the realm of tourism. Whatever countries I would have traveled, and whatever Central Asian nationals would have traveled India, you would realize that the bilateral tourism is a major area of trade in services. And today, in the times of COVID, the kind of importance that you give to digital connectivity, be it telemedicine, tele-education, the various interactions on different domains of human existence, which is now getting fructified through digital connectivity, is another area which I think augurs well for immediate focus. So digital and air can be still focused on an immediate term, whereas maritime and land connectivity will require some more time, because it is a little more complicated, because the number of countries that are participating in international north-south transport corridor are quite large.
Right. Okay. Time to get quick closing comments now from all my panelists with the best way forward. Starting first with you, Ambassador.
Best way forward is, I'll just build on what Mr. Das said. The air connectivity or the air corridor, I think, is an immediate and is a low-hanging fruit. The Central Asians have been very sort of forward in this. If you just look at the number of flights that they operate, we have perhaps lagged behind. And we also forget that in '92, you would remember that Karol Bagh, Nehru Place, etc., they all had Russian notice boards and Russian speakers. Why? Because it was people who were coming, and we used to call them suitcase traders. They used to really come. It was really like traveling from, say, Aligarh to Delhi. The retail trader who takes a 2.5-hour train is the same distance by air to Tashkent. So that is something that we should encourage. Even today, through that route, a lot of pharmaceuticals, textiles, woolens are going. And there's no reason why we should not promote. In fact, Delhi should, to my mind, act as a regional hub for their movement from all the countries in Central Asia, East and West. Thank you.
General?
Now, just taking off from what the ambassador said, I think for us it will be vital now to actually expedite everything which we are doing in the Chabahar port. That is one. And number two, now that we are also deeply involved in the Afghan peace process, I think we need to sort of take that forward to the best of our ability. The Central Asian republics are our neighbors. And I think the way our foreign policy is moving on that direction, I think we have to simply maintain that momentum. And I think it is absolutely on the rails and on the correct lines. Frank.
Professor Das, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Well, one more thing which I would like to add, which has been missed out upon, because of lack of connectivity, we should not conclude that economic activities and economic connectivity between India and Central Asia is not possible. And one of the areas, one of the channels through which we can look at doing this is through foreign direct investment from India into this region. What we can do is we can harness their natural mineral energy resources, the skilled manpower that they have, and our investments can actually possibly contribute to addressing some of the problems which Ambassador Sinha and General Katoch just mentioned. Because what India has, and perhaps other countries do not have in this region, is goodwill. And we must translate that goodwill into economic returns through foreign direct investment, which will be employment generating in that region also. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. On that note, then, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of India's World. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that India and the Central Asian republics share a very historic relationship and share several areas of cooperation and also can help each other in a lot of ways. A threat emanating out of terror is a common concern for India and the region. The problem right now, of course, is connectivity, though a lot has been done as far as air connectivity is concerned, and there's a lot of scope for digital connectivity. But what we need to work on to going forward is rail, road, and maritime connectivity. All efforts also need to be made to ensure that we bring peace and stability to the region. But from an economic point of view, we should also continue our business and not just wait for peace. That is tremendous goodwill for India in the region. We need to convert that to economic gains going forward. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.